I think my first hesitation, just as a pastor, is that I'm not a hard hat guy. I don't work in the construction world.
As a pastor, personally speaking, I do not have the skill set it takes to be the driver for a building project. It's not my gift set, and it's honestly not my greatest desire.
To be able to even get my head around what this would look like in the scope of how big building a building could be, that was a huge hesitation.
I believe that when you get too caught up in the actual building, the actual design, you begin to take away focus from what you're hired to do, which is to shepherd the flock of the church.
You know, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be an architect. So it was really exciting when I began working with churches to be using my skills for kingdom work, because I hadn't planned on that. For all the years that I went to school and had done projects before churches, I hadn't really thought that I'd be working with churches. So it's a lot of fun. You know, it wasn't too long though before I started seeing a lot of recurring problems. I had to ask myself, what am I going to do about it? Because if the process of starting a building program brings all this conflict to the surface, what can I do about it? And who likes fundraising? I mean, good grief, who wants to raise money? Those that have had a bad experience with fundraising, they just bristle at the thought of doing it again, and they won't do it.
I have many pastors come to me and say, Jim, I hate fundraising. And that's a common statement I hear all the time. And the good news is I love fundraising. I've been called to this work, been doing it for over 2 decades, and understand that really this is less about the money and more about the ministry, specifically to serve small to medium-sized nonprofit and charitable organizations. I look at church groups and community groups and realize they're doing great work and they have a lot of heart and passion for their mission, but they don't have a lot of resource and they really don't have a lot of expertise when it comes to their business model or their ministry models.
There's no better team, from my point of view, with their areas of expertise than Jim and Phil.
When they met with us as a leadership team, really did help us, I think, process through what this was going to look like.
It's not as difficult as I thought it would be because we have the right people around us.
Jim's expertise has been in the area of funding the project. And again, us not being a fundraising firm, Jim really helped us understand all the different components with that.
You know, it's okay that you're not an architect. It's okay that you're not a fundraiser like myself. God has called you to be a pastor, to be a minister, to be someone who's going to guide and shepherd the flock. If God's called you to do that, then you can hire and bring folks like myself and Phil, architects, others that have the expertise that we've been called to. I've been called to teach and train people how to raise resource for God's ministry.
To hire Phil and to look at what we're going to be doing, we needed a master plan in our church.
The master plan has been wonderful because initially we thought we would just throw up a couple buildings in the back. And when we hired Phil and just realized that would be a very foolish short-term thing, it wouldn't have worked. We would have went to the city and felt defeated once again if that's what we would have chose to do.
We realized early on that we needed to connect the mission to the project, and so in order for people's hearts to be engaged, which was directly connected to their wallets, there had to be a missional alignment.
We actually have developed over the years a process we call the integrated process model. And that model really outlines how you work with an architect, how you work with a fundraiser, and also financing potentially, and also with your communication team.
One of the first things he did was get a pulse. And I felt like that's the first thing that Phil did as well, was he came in to get a pulse of the DNA of the church. Let's see where they're at in this process. It just means a lot to me that they're both kingdom-minded, that both of them love God and are serving Him in their own churches.
Jim and I really feel called to come alongside the church and help them to do what God has called them to do.
At the end of the day, we believe that fundraising is really less about the money and more about connecting God's people with God's work. And we know that aligns with you because you're a pastor, you're called to your ministry. So our heart's desire is to work with you to help you find a way to raise the resource you need and build the projects that God has called you to build.